You've probably seen this photo before, right? It's one of the most famous in music history. But what if I told you the whole story behind it was a total accident? Yeah. Today we're going to dig into how one completely spontaneous afternoon in Memphis created an absolute legend.
I mean, look at it. It looks like a planned superstar summit, doesn't it? Kind of like the rock and roll Avengers assembling. You've got Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash, all together. But the real story? So much stranger, and honestly way more interesting, because it was never supposed to happen. So what really went down that day?
Okay, so our story kicks off right here. December 4th, 1956. Sun Records in Memphis. And let's be clear, this was not some grand meeting of the minds. It was just another Tuesday. You know, a normal day in a tiny studio. But the whole vibe that founder Sam Phillips had created there, well, it was the perfect storm for a miracle.
To really get the magic of this moment, you gotta feel the different energies swirling around in that room. First, you've got Elvis. He's only 21, but he's already a global star who's left Sun for the big leagues at RCA. Then you have Sun's current heavy hitters, Carl Perkins, who's flying high with blue suede shoes, and of course, Johnny Cash, whose song I Walk the Line is a monster crossover hit. And then there's the wild card, a guy named Jerry Lee Lewis, a piano player who is an absolute genius, but at this point, totally unknown. Sam Phillips had just hired him. So, why was this little studio such a pressure cooker? Well, it all boils down to this number right here. Just a year before, Sam Phillips had to sell Elvis's contract to RCA for a whopping $35,000, and he did it just to keep the lights on. I mean, that cash literally saved Sun Records, but it left this giant Elvis-sized hole in its future. Phillips was desperate, and I mean desperate, to find his next superstar. The clock was seriously ticking.
But the thing that made Sun so special was Sam Phillips's whole philosophy. See, he hated polished, slick, perfect recordings. Hated them. He was hunting for something he called the perfectly imperfect sound. You know that raw, electric energy you feel in old blues, gospel, and R&B? That's what he wanted. His studio wasn't a factory for hits. It was an incubator for spontaneity. And that, right there, is exactly what the universe needed for what was about to happen.
So, the big question is, how on earth did these four titans end up in the same tiny room at the same time? Well, it all started as a totally normal run-of-the-mill recording session for just one of them. But a string of pure coincidences was about to turn it into a piece of music history.
Okay, so check out how these dominoes fell. First up, Carl Perkins shows up for his scheduled session. He's there to record a new track called Matchbox. To fill out the sound, Sam Phillips brings in the new kid, Jerry Lee Lewis, to tickle the ivories. Then, out of nowhere, Elvis Presley, the biggest star on the planet, just pops in for a social call, just to say hi. And finally, Johnny Cash hears the music and wanders in, probably just to see what all the fuss is about. And boom. Just like that, four future legends all in one room, completely by accident.
And this is the absolute key to the whole story. None of this was supposed to be recorded. It was just a jam. But the engineer that day, a guy named Jack Clement, he knew he was watching history unfold. And he basically thought to himself, I'd be a fool not to record this. So he quietly hit the record button and captured pure lightning in a bottle. And the best part? Nobody in the room even noticed.
All right, so you've got four founding fathers of rock and roll in one room. You're probably thinking, okay, this must have been a legendary showdown of their greatest hits, right? A rock and roll battle royale. Well, what they actually played that afternoon is maybe the most surprising part of this entire story. This right here is what's so wild. Forget rock and roll for a second. Almost half of the entire session was Southern gospel music. Seriously, these icons of teenage rebellion, they spent the afternoon singing the old church hymns they all grew up with. Their common ground, the language they all spoke, wasn't the music making them famous. It was the music of their childhood faith.
Yeah, this wasn't a performance for an audience. This was personal. This was them just sharing a piece of their past, singing songs like Peace in the Valley and Down by the Riverside. It was way less rock supergroup and way more spontaneous church choir practice.
Of course, with a story this good, you're going to get some myths. And over the decades, the legend has gotten so big that it sometimes kind of pushes the truth aside. So let's do a little myth busting. Let's separate the facts from the fiction.
Okay, so the biggest myth out there that Johnny Cash isn't actually on the tape. For years, people have argued that you just can't hear his famous deep voice, but Cash himself set the record straight in his own autobiography. He said, and I'm quoting here, "My voice is on the tape. I was farthest away from the mic, and I was singing a lot higher than I usually did. So yes, he was there. He was just blending in with the harmony.
Another thing that muddies the waters? The huge smash hit Broadway musical. Which is great, but for the sake of drama, it basically crams years of history into a single afternoon. You have all these contract fights and big showdowns. The reality, though, was way simpler. It was just a friendly jam. The real drama? That was still a couple years down the road.
And you know what? Even that iconic photo isn't telling you the whole story. The original picture, the uncropped one, actually shows a fifth person. It's Elvis's girlfriend at the time, Marilyn Evans, and she's sitting right there on the piano. She was edited out later on, which is what created that powerful image of just the four guys that we all know so well.
Okay, so let's recap. It was an accident, they mostly sang gospel music, and the legend has definitely been beefed up over the years. So why? Why does this one super casual jam session still have such a legendary status in the history of music?
Because it's more than just a recording. It's a perfect snapshot of a cultural Big Bang. It is the only time these four pioneers were ever recorded together. It catches the exact moment their sacred past smashed right into their secular future. It's the ultimate proof of Sam Phillips' genius. And that photo, whether it's cropped or not, basically gave birth to the whole idea of a rock and roll supergroup.
So, the $1 Million Quartet tape was a complete accident. A secret recording that just happened to capture the authentic, unfiltered sound of a new era being born. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If someone made a secret recording today that captured the true spirit of our time, what do you think we'd be listening to?